neither could I go to them and bring people back. It was fellow countrymen and women. If ever you can get across this line, my government will do whatever it can to give you succor and protection within these boundaries.
What's happening here, in fact, is that Nigeria is beginning to split into some of its constituent parts. How long have you lived in Lagos?
11 years.
Why are you going now?
I'm going because the situation here is dangerous. How do I continue to stay here? I think I'll lose my life anyway.
I felt very much insecure, and I believe most people did. Especially as one saw people killed and heard stories of how others we didn't see were killed and maimed and some buried alive and so on. And especially after a certain stage when General Gowon, who was then in charge of the federal government, gave promises that these things would not happen again. And I believe he meant the promises, but he wasn't able to prevent their happening again.
I believe that the majority of the Igbo people, in their hearts of hearts, honestly, would rather see Nigeria remain one. But that is, in fact, in this particular chap called Ojukwu, and I know his ambition. I've been with him. I've served with him in the army before, and I know him.
Gowon was very naive and young and inexperienced, and Ojukwu was, he always regarded himself much smarter than Gowon, better educated. He'd been to Oxford and that sort of thing, and that he'd been a governor for a short period in the East, and that he was, the better man.
The Nigerian government practically castrated Eastern Nigerian authorities. And it was a question of what do you do in the circumstance. We decided to hold on to what we had at that time. It was like cutting your losses.
In May 1967, Ojukwu finally took his people out of Nigeria. Biafra was proclaimed. The Nigerian government uncompromisingly opposed Ojukwu's rebellion. With their military superiority guaranteed, their position was simple. Biafra was a part of Nigeria and would remain so. Ojukwu's army prepared for war with only a handful of real guns.
About a month or so after the declaration of Biafra, the war started. The feeling about the war was that we were ready to fight, to defend Biafra. And every person, especially the young men, myself being included, we are eager to fight for Biafra and die for Biafra.
People were still very determined. Everybody wanted to train and go into the war. And I recall some suggestions that if the military people could not find enough guns, it would be all right just to call masses of people together and arm them with machetes and so on, and march up against Nigerian troops. And truly, machetes were bought in large numbers in the market, and people came out wanting to be taken to the field.
Running at the hole! Left, right!
Biafra didn't have the weapons to fight a war, but that was not what Ojukwu told the world.
If civil war comes, and I do think it is imminent, our people have for a long time been prepared for this eventuality, and I am confident of their readiness. I think that when it does come, the people on the other side would be surprised as to what they're going to get.
I knew Ojukwu was very interested in him because he was the only Oxford man then in the, I was at Oxford, then in the Nigerian army. And he was evidently clever. He was also extremely rich. He was certainly very ambitious. When I saw him in Enugu, he was immensely confident. The only thing that worried him, he said, that he was afraid the government would declare a blockade of the East. The government in Lagos would declare a blockade of the eastern region, and that this would affect his trade.
During the war, we had to rely on ourselves totally. We were under total blockade. We had nothing. Whatever we did, we produced ourselves. And again, different people showed they were heroes, every one of them. Because there was nothing. There was no challenge too much. I remember the first Biafra-made armored vehicle. I also remember the first attempt at launching a rocket, Biafra-made. I remember efforts to see whether we can, in fact, build planes. It didn't work, but we tried. Oh no, we tried everything.
I remember instances where two soldiers would go to battle, one behind the other. The reason for that was that they had one rifle between them. And if the first soldier died, the second would pick up his rifle and use it. I remember other instances where they went into a defensive position with one round per man. That was defensive rations. 2 rounds per man was attacking rations. Nigeria had no problems. They had armored cars, they had armored personnel carriers, artillery, they had limitless trucks. And as for small arms and small armed ammunition, I heard somewhere that more small arms rounds were expended by the Nigerian army in those 2.5 years than by all the forces in the Second World War.